Hello, welcome to AskWxm, the podcast in which we try to answer your questions as best we can about Wrexham Football Club. Remember, the hashtag AskWxm is used on Blue Sky and Twitter in order to get your opinions and your questions during the commentaries. And some of the questions are so darn good, or not noticed at the time, and so here's where we try and pick up a few of the very best ones. By the way, if you're watching on the video, if there are any issues with the light, it's because I'm having to deal with the sun, a new concept in Wrexham, and something I think is going to catch on, but at the moment we're still having some teething pains. So anyway, let's move straight on with this. First question, Paul Bell. Can you please expand on the importance of goal difference on your next Ask Wrexham podcast? Yes, I could. Although, to be fair, the work's to a great extent been done for me. Steve Kernsley saying it's the first tiebreaker if the teams end the season with the same number of points. 100% correct. So, goal difference, the goals you scored, minus the goals you concede, gives you your goal difference. It wasn't always the tiebreak. It used to be goal average, which was incredibly convoluted and was about the goals in your game divided by the number of games you played. And as you could imagine, that gets dropped because it would make the final day of the season quite confusing, where you're thinking, okay, if we score another goal, our goal average will go up by 0.04, what if something happens in the other game? You know, so way too complex. Although I'll go through the other tie breaks now, and it should be pointed out that different competitions have different rules. So, for example, in competitions like the Champions League or the World Cup, it'll be head-to-head often, which is used to decide. So let's have a little look at what we've got, because Thunder Bay Red says if the points and goal difference are the same, what's the next criteria to be first in the league? And Eric Lobach correctly replies, after goal difference it goes to goals for, which Wycombe was still ahead of at the time of the question. Yeah, so goals scored. So if your goal difference is the same as the team who scored the most goals, then let's have a look through the old reliable EFL handbook, which goes through every possibility. So firstly, it's goal difference, then it's goals scored, and then head-to-head. So you would go, if we take Wycombe as an example, if we end up dead level on goal difference and goals scored, they would then look at the record head-to-head, which means we'd be better off because we beat them 3-2 at home and we beat them 1-0 away. It says that would be judged based first on points gained, so 6-0 to us. Goal difference, in case obviously, 2 draws or a win apiece. Well, obviously, goal difference is 4-2 in our favour, and then goals scored. Well, we're struggling to see the difference between goal difference and goals scored there in a 2-team head-to-head. I guess if there's more than 2 teams with an identical record, which seems incredibly unlikely, that's where that would come in. Then it will be decided by the number of wins. Then the goals scored in away games, strangely arbitrary. And then, wait for it, the team that has the lowest number of penalty points accumulated after 42 games. Why 42? I'm not sure. Seems a bit arbitrary, that, doesn't it? And penalty points are awarded basically by infringements of the rules. So it's the team that has the least penalty points. So in this case, 4 points for a booking, 10 points for handball on the line, or handball leads to a send-off because it denied a goal-scoring opportunity. Also 10 points for a foul that denies a scoring opportunity. Also 10 points for a second yellow card. And then 12 points for serious foul play, spitting at a person, violent conduct, or using offensive, insulting or abusive language and or gestures. So basically they would go through all the cards that you'd received and they would work out what you would get. I mean, those 12 pointers are basically going through the rules for red cards. So I hope that clears it up. But even more than that, I hope we don't need to worry about that because we get the job done at the weekend, eh? Right, now then, next question. Senora Oneth says, what was your favourite away team to visit in our non-league era and why? There were so many. I mean, up to a point, the non-league was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Because you went to completely new places, they were often of a nice scale. They were proper local clubs with, sort of fans who were very committed to that club, and it was brilliant to see with a slight grassroots tinge. As time went on, that novelty faded. Also, the nature of the league faded. You had a lot more clubs like us who were Football League teams falling on hard times than previously, and fewer of the more folksy clubs. But those folksy clubs, there were a few, and I gotta say, I guess I've got to be consistent and say what I've said for a long, long time. Kidderminster Harriers, the team Christian Dibble went to, the team we scored the ghost goal when the ball went through the net at. If only because the food there was unbelievable. I mean, generally in the Football League you go around, and to a fair extent you get the same stuff in non-league. Smaller clubs often would have their own catering. Kidderminster was famous for their remarkable food made by a hotel in the town, and some of it was just handmade glory. Agbara soup was a famous thing. It was just like just everything in it. It's like a cow and some vegetables thrown into a blender, utterly magnificent. They also had amazing pies, and either of those, this Kidderminster was terrific. I loved going to a place like Eastbourne, which was nothing as such to distinguish it, except a very friendly, real community club, owned by the fans, and it was a CIC, which is the type of company which its reason for existing is to do things for the community. So that was really, really good. And Lewis was another team like Eastbourne down on the southeast coast, which was a long trek, but a lovely place, a real picturesque stadium with the crazy name, the Dripping Pan. And it was like a natural bowl that it was built into, grass slopes on the sides, a really attractive place. And again, incredibly friendly. Those ones stand out. Workington, who used to be in the Football League a long time ago, I loved that because it was just still the old ground from like the 20s. It had so many unusual features to it, strange shaped old-fashioned floodlights and big terraces that were empty, but it's full of character, and they were very, very friendly up there. And when we were going out with my dad, and he'd immediately sort of set himself in before the match at the social club, and was like surrounded by all the local fellows of the same age, and they were all chatting about football in the 50s. And I thought, this is really likeable, very friendly people as well. And they also say about food, which often was a fun sort of factor in determining differences between clubs. They had Cumberland sausage baps. Whoa. I remember the tragedy. It was windy. I bought mine and the top came off. So it became a sausage on half a bap. But Cumberland sausage, nice sort of spicy sausage cooked, made in a spiral. It was really nice. So getting to get a grip of some of those interesting local variations was really, really interesting and very gratifying. And often you'd find very friendly clubs at that sort of small scale level. Now here's a fun one. Trago Man. So 10% of Fletcher's appearances have now been in a Wrexham shirts. That shocked me, but you're quite right. I'd look 750 overall appearances was what he brought up at the weekend, and 75 Wrexham games. So 10%, that's surprising, isn't it? Other than Max, 100%, what members of the current roster are at the highest percentage of their total games played for Wrexham? Well, somebody else pointed this out actually. I forgot to clip the screen grab the tweet. Actually, that's not true of Clwyd, because Clwyd had a loan spell at Carnarvon Town in the Welsh League, which leads nicely onto Tragoman's follow-up point. Oh gosh! Before I go on to that, there is currently one player who has played for Wrexham this season, the first team, who has played 100% of his games for Wrexham, and that is the boy wonder himself, Harry Ashfield. Harry Ashfield's played all his games for Wrexham. He's come through the club. Until January, that was true of Aaron James, but we loaned him out to Warrington, didn't we? So he's now played for them. So yeah, at the moment, Ashfield's the only one. However, Tragoman also says, and I don't know what the right metrics are. Do all cup games count? Does non-league fit in the normal stats? They don't in the US MLB. Parky's not at 1,000 matches coached per EFL, not counting the non-league. And that's on Wikipedia showing that. Now then, it may or may not be that. And this is a little bit of a bugbear of mine, as I'm a bit sad and I quite like putting the stats together. And I write those Wrexham anoraks on which the Fletcher stats came up. Because we are, in Britain, I feel very fast and loose we play with the stats. And depending on where you look, you'll find accurate statistics or not. And you have to sort of know the battleground. So plenty of places, I think what that one has done is not put ruled out the non-league games. I think what that Wikipedia listed in is not counted cup games. If you look on Wikipedia, they only put league matches on. Now, that's nonsense, isn't it? I mean, to give you an example, if you are Pep Guardiola, your Premier League games, your Bundesliga games, your La Liga games in charge of Man City, Bayern Munich and Barcelona are very important, but surely your Champions League games are more important. Some cup games are massive. All get cup games that are first team matches are first team matches and should count, and yet for some reason a lot of places just put league matches on it, which is a nonsense. There are other subtleties, so you need to be very careful of online sources. For example, the stats which are used on most of the serious statistical websites of this nature, I'm not talking about data analysis, I'm talking just about appearances and goals and things like that. Websites like Transfermarkt or Who Scored or Soccerbase, those sort of websites, well, they take all their data from PA. So PA data aggregates all the statistics around the different clubs, but you must be extremely careful. So for example, below National League level, I mean the top division of National League where Wrexham were, league stats become very unreliable, if not just incomplete, and they'll often still publish them even though they're incomplete. They may sometimes feature some FA Cup games, and you get weird things where they have the goals but not the games played. So they have a player who's made no appearances in the FA Cup in a season but scored 6 goals. There are some players, Ryan Barnett for example, who've played lower than National League, and you just can't trust their stats. You just can't. They just, Mendy as well. You can't trust their stats from below that level. Also, even if they have only played at the National League level and above, PA don't send people out to the preliminary rounds of the FA Cup or the trophy. So Wrexham players' stats, if they play for Wrexham in the National League, automatically will be wrong because they will not have counted those games, even though those games, obviously are first team games and do count. So there's lots of subtleties like that. My argument would be any first team game, any game that's treated as a first team game, is therefore counts. One example of it would be like when Wrexham a couple of years ago bizarrely played in the Scottish equivalent of the Virtue Trophy, representing England, even though it was a headache. That's a real game. No, they're serious games. We may have picked youth teams in some of those matches, but they are serious games. It is a fact that we went to Rangers and played at Ibrox, admittedly against their youth team, our reserves against their youth team. It's a fact. I went. I was there. I saw it happen. It's all terribly inconsistent, I think, is the honest truth of the matter. Bottom line, a senior game is a senior game. End of. Cup, whatever. They all have equal importance when it comes to totting up the stats. but a lot of websites don't put any thought into it, and therefore you've got to be a little bit careful with that, or are just incomplete. Todd, this is during the Blackpool game, said that Andy was quite right. When our play slows down, we're predictable. We need more speed, we need more space to get those open shots. Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I think that's what Phil Parkinson is wanting from the team when he sends them out there, is what we saw at Blackpool. I don't think he sends them out to be cautious or negative or wary. It's just whether they're able to make it click. Certainly did at Blackpool. Hopefully they can do it this weekend as well. But yeah, the tempo is all that is really important, isn't it? If we can quickly, accurately shift the ball around, we can hurt teams, and we've got a lot of dynamic players who can do exactly that. You know, McLean embodies that, doesn't he? But Rathbone as well. What's the point in going through them? But yeah, you're quite right. Shifting the ball around is one thing. Doing it quickly is what's going to catch opposing teams out. Is going to create holes in their defences. I mean, don't get me wrong. Great passes can also do that, and Matty James is as good a passer as you're going to get at the League One level. But yeah, you're quite right. This team is built for speed, if you will. If you can get that ball moving quickly and get at players and isolate players because the ball's moving quickly across the pitch, that's when we look at our very, very best. You're absolutely right, Todd. Right, now then. Craig in Vancouver says, listening from Vancouver, sorry, well done me. Question, what mental health support do the players receive? That is a great question. You may have seen in the previous series of Welcome to Wrexham, Sam, the sports psychologist, and he's there and available for the players as well. Now, of course, I appreciate sports psychology as a slightly different thing from that, from, you know, some mental health support. But I mean, clearly, and I think we've seen examples of this as well on Welcome to Wrexham, that the club and the ownership are very quick and open to support players, and it's clear that there are pathways there. It's not, I mean, I feel in a way it's not really my place to go and ask for specifics as such, but nonetheless, clearly there are professionals in place, there are pathways in place. The amount of employees at the club has mushroomed as a result of us scaling up, and as a consequence of that, there's a big medical staff which take care of all sorts of needs, including being able to refer people on if necessary, obviously, in terms of mental health. I mean, thankfully, mental health issues in general, I think the campaign is working to a great extent of removing the stigma of talking about mental health issues. Also, I think football has been at the vanguard of that, certainly in Britain, in terms of trying to destigmatise mental health issues for men, because men often are the ones who don't want to talk about things. There are lots of really, really good charities around, and they do great work supporting. We had, of course, a Dragon Chat as well. It's a fantastic thing that we offer. But yes, the players will get their support as well. Don't worry about that. Now then, let's get on to the vexed issue of football studs. Wrexham All the Way said, since so many players, not only Owen O'Connell, were slipping over on the pitch on Good Friday, what are the regulations about football boot studs? Something which is followed up by George Dobson's ponytail, saying, good question, I'm wondering if metal cleats are allowed. So cleats is the American word for studs, I would say. Right, now then. The weird thing is, there are kind of no rules. Now, there is talk about there being a maximum stud length rule, but it's not actually in the laws of the game. In fact, the laws of the game are surprisingly simplistic. The only thing which applies to studs in the laws of the game is the section on safety. A player must not use equipment or wear anything that is dangerous. All items of jewellery are forbidden and must be removed. Using tape to cover jewellery is not permitted. The players must be inspected before the start of the match, and substitutes before they enter the field of play. If a player is wearing or using unauthorised dangerous equipment or jewellery, the referee must order the player to remove the item, leave the field of play at next stoppage if the player is unable or unwilling to comply. Player who refuses to comply or wears the item again must be cautioned or booked. in simple language. That is actually all it does. That's the only direct comment. And so, okay, the laws of the game, and competitions will have handbooks which will add clarification, or local FAs could add guidelines. But essentially, it's that studs shouldn't be dangerous. So they're talking about like worn studs or sharp studs, metal, because you can have metal studs, yes. Metal studs can sort of self-sharpen when you're walking on hard surfaces going to the pitch, for example. And so, you're supposed to check the edges of them to see whether they're dangerous or not. But beyond that, yeah, there's not any specific ruling on studs. Now, Gareth followed up nicely, saying that professional players generally choose from 4 main stud types: a type for natural grass, for wet, muddy pitches, hard pitches, and artificial pitches. And he suggested, could be right, I think, Friday's game appears to be affected by stud choices to some degree. It was very, very wet. And the players did seem to have trouble keeping their feet. The other issue, of course, is the traditional stud, which would be either a screw-in that you would screw into the sole of your boot, or you'd have a moulded sole, often used more on like artificial or very hard surfaces where it's rubber and the studs are part of the rubber sole. But also, a more modern idea are blades. Blades, if you're watching on the video here, there's Mark Harris, current Welsh international's boot, which got split open at Notts County. And so he has blades and stairs, and they're sort of stud shaped, but they're not quite exactly the same shape. You can get much longer blades in this as well. Looking at these, would I define them as blades, or just fancy schmancy studs? The bottom line is, are they safe? And it's an arbitrary thing. It essentially falls on the officials to make a decision, which I can't help thinking, call me bad-minded, is the people who frame the laws attempt to avoid getting sued by dropping it on the referee if someone gets hurt, and it's because the studs are bad. Oh, well, there's no rules about it. The referee should have spotted that. Am I being awful saying that? I hope so. Chip pace. Now then, let's move on to Sunday's big game, Welsh Cup Final, of course. Wrexham playing Newport County, so we'll finish off with some questions on that. Chip pace. Are all Welsh teams in the Welsh Cup competition even teams playing in the English Pyramid? If not, is there the same discussion taking place with the Women's Welsh Cup as there are now on the men's side? Of course, there was an attempt to get the men's Welsh teams in the English Pyramid to be able to take part in the Welsh Cup for men. No, there is not the same debate, because the same issue doesn't apply. There's 2 elements to this. One of them is that, the reason Welsh teams are in the English system is historical. Before the creation of the Football League, teams played in regional leagues. Teams like Wrexham, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport are on the border. So we often played in competitions which weren't English or Welsh, but were just local. And that was natural, isn't it? And as Wrexham improved and we sought more testing levels of competition, we did drop into the Welsh National League, as it was called at the time in the 19th century. But that actually was a Wrexham League. And so we just played in it twice, won it by miles twice, and then what is the point of this? It's just shooting fish in a barrel. It's too easy. So we're looking elsewhere, as we played in the Combination League, which is sort of teams around the Wrexham area going out into Cheshire and into the Wirral. So you're playing teams like Tranmere or Crewe or Chester. And then we also played in the Birmingham and District League, which does what it says on the tin, although they're stretching district a bit. Wrexham's an hour and a half drive now on the motorway to Birmingham, so it would have been a fair old trek going down the other side of Birmingham in those days. But yeah, that's why we're in the English system. It's there's nothing mysterious or dubious about it. Quite simply, before a full National League system existed, you played at the local level which was appropriate to you to get a proper test on a Saturday afternoon. And it must be emphasised as well, the Football League's formed in 1888. It is extended to 2 leagues, but then not into the 4-league system, which wasn't the same as it is now. The 3rd division was regional, north and south, but that didn't happen until Wrexham came in as part of the expansion in 1921 to 4 leagues. So, if you didn't play in a local league, you didn't play. Therefore, We weren't looking for a Welsh league because the only one really open to us wasn't testing at all. And just to again put this point again, the actual Welsh league, the League of Wales, the first ever national league taking in all of Wales, was founded in 1993. So again, we weren't going to wait till 1993 to join the league, were we? So the historical issues are different because Wrexham, Swansea, Cardiff are already in the Welsh league for the women. The other issue, which is not the same, there aren't teams over the border. There's just one, in fact. Gwalior United was the Cardiff City Ladies, not Cardiff City Football Club, but they were a very successful team in Welsh women's football, and they decided they were going to take on a challenge by moving to the English system. So there's only one team over the border, and then they're not affiliated to one of the big clubs. And if the attraction for the Welsh FA would be get the big clubs in, like in the men's competition, in order to heighten interest and publicity, well, Gwalior United, we're good, but we're then not going to be bringing that to the party. So yeah, basically that issue does not exist on the women's part of the game. It's set up completely differently, which leads nicely on to the next question. Daniel in Maine saying, does anything come with winning the Bute Energy Welsh Cup beyond the trophy and pride in an excellent season? And said, well, beyond the trophy, the pride we already have in abundance. Absolutely right, Daniel. No, it is just, can you win the Welsh Cup? Can you be the Welsh Cup winners? That's it. And it's enough, darn it. Like I said, different system compared to the men's. We have the Wrexham, Cardiff, Swansea. Our pinnacle of achievement really is to win the Welsh trophies. The league champions get into Europe, but it's difficult to be competitive in Europe at the moment for Welsh club teams. So yeah, that is it. Welsh Cup is an end in itself. And last question, Paul Cosgrove. Will the Welsh Cup Final be on iFollow on April the 27th? Sadly not, because it's being covered live on S4C. So it will be available online on the Scorio YouTube channel, which is S4C, the Welsh TV channel, language TV channel's football show. I'm going down there, and I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to do an audio commentary, so have a look on the club website and they'll be able to publicise that, but that's certainly my understanding, so I'll be down there for it anyway, and I'll be commentating, but not on a stream, because we're not allowed to stream because Scorio are covering it live. But well, let's just hope that goes well. Let's just hope Saturday goes well. Let's just hope that this time next week I'll be answering all sorts of lovely, happy questions about where we should store trophies, or tips on interesting spots to go in the championship. Wouldn't that be lovely? Anyway, I'm off. Keep the Ask Wrexham questions coming. Like I said, hashtag Ask Wrexham, AskWxm on Blue Sky or Twitter, and I'll see you next time. I am Mark Griffiths from Wrexham AFC.